Our next session is a panel discussion on CGD infrastructure development, the growth sector. This discussion will touch upon points like CGD infrastructure in India, key issues and challenges, gas demand supply dynamics and economics, financial innovation required for expanding gas network, etc. I would like to invite Sudheer Singh, editor, ETEnergyworld, to moderate this session. Over to you, Sudheer.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you and a very warm welcome on our platform today. I am Sudheer and this is a panel discussion on city gas distribution infrastructure in India. How has the sector developed overall and what is the way forward? With an eminent set of panelists that we have today with us, including Ravi Agarwal from GAIL, we have Balaji Gopalan from ABB, we have Sandeep Trehan from Gas, we have Nikhil Moghe from KPMG, we have Ranjan Dwivedi from Central UP Gas Limited, and Mr. Arun Mishra from HP Oil. A very warm welcome to all of you. And to begin with, let me start this discussion by asking Nikhil, if you can help us set the context of this discussion and basically tell us where do we stand today, when it comes to CGD infrastructure, how it has evolved in our country over the past few years, let's say 5 years or so. Where are we in terms of broad numbers, the connections, CNG stations, the kilometer of pipelines, etc. And overall, at a very broad level, what are the government's main aspirations in terms of where do we want to go from here over the next few years? And then, if you can also touch upon slightly on issues like financing and gas sourcing and technology. Yeah, over to you, Nikhil.
Sure. Thank you, Sudheer. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you folks. So let me start with setting the context in terms of where we are and how things have changed in last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. Now, we have seen considerable movement, in the sector after 2018, when there were 2 rounds of CGD bidding that were announced. So the round 9 and round 10 had phenomenal success in the CGD sector, and that was the largest ever in any infrastructure sector that has happened in the country, where so many licenses were being awarded. So this actually laid a foundation of mega scale infrastructure creation in the country, and especially in the city gas space, which was kind of, I would say, a docile sector for last 10 odd years before 2018. So after the completion of 10th round, gas would be available in around 228 geographical areas. And if you put together, it would comprise of somewhere around 402 districts in the country. To put things in perspective, it actually covers around 70% of the population of our country and around 53% of the geographical area of the country. So you can imagine what the massive scale of infrastructure projects that are being licensed and given licenses to. Moving forward, if I were to look at where do we stand and going forward, say in next 5-7 years, where we will reach, currently we would be somewhere around 55 to 60 lakh of connections in the country. We would reach to around 4 crores of connection in next 5 to 7 years. In terms of CNG station, we are somewhere around 1900 CNG stations. It'll reach to 10,000 CNG stations across the length and breadth of the country, which is like a huge number that we are looking at. So if in terms of growth, if you have to see, historically till date, in last 5 years, the PNG connections has grown by around 50% and CNG has grown by around 40%, which is like quite a big number. And in terms of investments, if you ask me, the total investment size for all these geographical areas put together would be somewhere around 1,20,000 Indian rupees crores, which is one of the largest in any infrastructure sector in the country for this shorter period of time. And I was just checking with some of my colleagues, and I got to know that around 40,000 crores of Indian rupees of financial closure has already been achieved. Now, in a nutshell, if I were to put, that stage is set right for us to, and for the sector to grow exponentially. But there are some challenges and issues definitely that needs to be addressed, and I believe we will discuss among those challenges. I would actually want to highlight some of these critical factors, that maybe we would want to discuss today. So financing is one of the key factor that I would want to discuss, because financing is key to this particular sector, because this is a retail sector. It is like an infrastructure sector where the payback and the positive cash flows comes only after 5 to 8 years of network development. And that also depends on how the demand buildup is taking place, which are the customers that we are targeting. The second point is gas sourcing, and it's very critical because end of the day, domestic gas availability is as much as it is, right? So the CGDs will have to look at other alternatives such as LNG or any other coal gasification methods for getting more and more gas, or for that matter CBG, into their own infrastructure. So gas sourcing becomes very, very critical. And considering the kind of gas prices that we have in a country, it makes much more sense for us to talk about that. Third point is consumer centricity. Now, like I said, this is a retail business. This is a service industry, right? Where, once a customer is always a customer. If that's the phenomenon we take with, and the CGD companies take with, then we will look at the customers growing steadily. And hence customer centricity, having technologies to improve customer satisfaction becomes much more imperative. And with that, I come to the next point, which is technological interventions. And technological interventions not only on the customer side, but also on the operations side, to increase efficiency and also agility in operations. Now, we all have seen what things have happened due to COVID, right? Many CGD companies were impacted. So we also need to bring in agility into the entire operational setup that we have, because end of the day, we are supplying gas to the households for cooking purpose, right? We cannot afford to stop the gas for cooking. So that's where agility comes into play, and that's where the technology comes into play. And the last but not the least, I would touch upon vendor and subcontractor ecosystem development. And that's where, we should talk about, because this is a very niche sector. This is a very technology driven sector, and specialized contractors, vendors to help us build this infrastructure, which is like currently the vendors are not, I would say they are there, but then the kind of scale we need, it's not there. So we need to work towards development of the vendors. So these are 4 or 5 points I would say are the key themes where we can discuss, and happy to participate and answer any questions. Sudheer, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil, for setting that context. And while you were talking about these factors, I wanted to point out that if you look at it traditionally, when it comes to discussions on gas, there has been a traditional debate about both availability or supply and prices, right? There is a traditional view. There used to be a traditional view that we don't have enough gas in our country, so we are dependent on a lot of imported LNG, and that comes at a price. And because the price is so high all the time, that it's difficult for projects to survive, and which is the reason why a lot of stress assets are there, right? Lack of availability of domestic gas. But you have already pointed out sourcing as a key factor going forward, and also prices. Can you help us understand where do we stand in terms of prices today? So the government has linked the formula of natural gas pricing to the market mechanisms, right? There's an international benchmark that we have linked it to. Has that led to, or is it likely to lead to, prices where all of this expansion that we are talking about, it becomes economically feasible, a venture?
Yeah. So see, we all understand that there are two kinds of gas that exist within the country, right? So if I were to say there are 3-4 pricing mechanisms, but I would actually bifurcate it into domestically produced gas and LNG. Now, domestically produced gas, like you rightly said, it is linked to certain indices, which are external indices, but because those indices are lower, the gas price, domestically produced gas price is at a very, very bare minimum price in the current context. Now, so there are two things to it. One is the availability of that domestic gas, and second is pricing. As far as pricing is concerned, all the companies, everybody would be pretty happy with that on the consumer side. But is it true for the producers? My answer would be no. because end of the day, producers are putting in investments to bring in gas onto the shore, right? So what government has done is that for going forward, anything that is beyond 2014, right, it is by market determined price. And market determined price is also based on certain formula and linkage to certain alternate fuels, such as LNG or such as fuel oil. Now, when we look at LNG in that perspective, the prices have gone down drastically. We all know what is the scenario today because of COVID, because there were many projects that were, for the FIDs of those projects have been stalled, because there are a lot of cargoes moving out in the global fleet where there are available cargoes at as low as $2.7 per MMBTU. But having said this, the prices are going up, and but these prices are going to remain soft. So to answer your question in short, the CGD companies should actually look at tying up for a short to mid term of LNG contract, which will actually give them enough buffer for them to operate going in future. And also these contracts are coming with various flexibilities. So gone are the days when LNG prices used to be with a lot of stringent contracts. Those contracts are changed now. Flexible contracts are available in the market.
So on pricing front, we are relatively better placed today
I
as
would say
compared
so,
to what
yes.
it was earlier. Okay, Mr. Agarwal, I want to turn to you on this at this point. So Nikhil has talked about a lot of factors, and one of those factors he has talked about is vendor development, right? Now I want to understand. We already have ensured that CGD infrastructure, that is the CNG and PNG infrastructure, has reached a lot of cities, right, around 200 cities or so. Despite all of this growth, which would have happened over a period of many years now, where do we stand today in terms of vendor development? Why does it still continue to be an area where we still see that there's a lot to be done? Similarly, on mainly vendor development, but then yes, other factors also like technology. Where exactly are we lacking, right? And where do we stand today, according to you? Because you are somebody who's on the ground, right? Who's implementing projects. So the kind of first-hand view that you can give us, we thought we can gain from that. Yeah.
So the government has done a lot, and in the CGD industries and the gas infrastructure, we see that around 17,000 kilometers of the pipeline is in place. But if you see that the gas capacity utilization of those pipeline, that is the issue which is concerning, because if you put up the pipeline, the major chunk of the business comes from the anchor customers, and those anchor customers are the fertilizers and the power. So CGD is taking the second seat whenever the heavy infrastructure is required to be put up. Now, one thing is that as of today, that we need to have everything is the consumer driven, and there has to be a synchronization of all the projects. And when we call as a synchronization of the project, does mean that the activity of the infrastructure would be able to supply and cater the GA requirement. That is the one aspect which is being done by the transmitting industries, the one who is laying up the pipeline. The second one is that the CGD industries who is putting up the infrastructure, so that the time when the infrastructure is ready, they are ready to get the consumers in the place. Now, when we say in a tier 1, tier 2 and the tier 3 cities, in the tier 1 cities, the total, because we have already used the maximum potential, and a lot of the real estates are not able to come in the way that it has taken up the pace, and the focus of the retail gas is now shifted to the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities. And when we call about the tier 2 cities, they don't have so much of the multi-apartment culture is not available. And people who are investing in the multi-apartments, they are many investors and they are not ready to come in. So the one is that we need to get the investment for any project we are putting that we need to have the investment. That is a point which is relevant to the financial closure. Now, when any vendors who are putting up the industries, whether it is a MDP pipeline or SS pipeline and the metering skid and the regulators, they have to see to it that the continuous flow of the orders in the quantum, so that their profitability is ensured, that has to be there. So the the issue is that we have whatever the GAs have been opened about the 406 industries, the penetration of the 70% of the masses, which has to be there in the domestic connections. But in the CGD industries, the domestic connection is not giving the profitable pie to the CGD, which comes only from the automotive sectors. Okay, so from the CGD sector, if the tier 2 and 3 tier cities, if you don't have the multiple apartments and you don't have the synchronization of the pipeline infrastructure, you have to take the profitable pie from the other sectors. Now, there's again the question is that at one point of time, the industries which are available, they are not able to cater the capacity utilization because of the pace of the execution of the CGD industries. That is not desirable, or that's not the way that it is growing it. At the other point of time, if the pace is grown, then the industries are not able to cater the present requirement, which is emphasized by the PNGRB. So the basic thing which I feel it to attack is that there has to be some umbrella which has to be catering the requirement. Like suppose if we say the CNG station, we have an online CNG station and we have the DBS CNG stations. So where we are putting up the CNG stations along with the oil companies. And what would happen then? We are putting with the oil companies, we have the daughter stations, and the companies has to give the certain kind of the portion to the oil industries, and the kind of the chunk of the volume doesn't turn up, so that this doesn't become the more profitable. Now, how is the solution is about it? There has to be a bigger cooperation between a wider cooperation between the central government and the state government. There has to be a wider cooperation between the CGD industries. Like when we say the CGD industries is putting up the highway, we have to see in the pan India, there has to be a super highways conducted everywhere. Now, one GA is allotted to the one particular entity. The second GA is allotted to the second entity. One entity is trying to complete the number of the stations of the CNG as per their mandate, which was authorized. The other entity it is doing the way that it has been authorized, but then who will take care of the pan India CNG highways? So the issue is required to be addressed at the bigger umbrella, where the PNGRB and the other bodies, they call up the meeting and they find out that this particular areas that we have to make this thing certified. And when the vendors are there assured that this much of the volume of their equipment and this much of the volume, it is going to be turned up. Then opening up the vendor developments is another thing, that if you find out that the open market is already there, the CGD industries and the Indian industries, they should make some kind of the joint ventures, and with those industries and the other foreign industries which are coming up, they should be considered some incentives, putting up given some land at some industrial parks at some state governments are concerned, and then we have to have some kind of the takeaway, assured takeaway from there. Otherwise, it is an egg and chicken kind of the story. You will be putting up the infrastructure, but then the CGD industry won't be able to realize that particular market, and the same would happen with the vendors. So at one point of time, we look forward that when the vendors would come on, and the vendor is not there today, if you don't have the compressor in the time, you will not put up the CNG station.
But broadly speaking, you're making 2 points. First is that you're saying that there's a certain lack of coordination or synchronization among projects, or coordination among agencies, which is leading to less profitable nature of particularly the residential side of things. And secondly, you're saying on vendor development, right? There is definitely a possibility that companies come together, form some kind of a JV, so that proper development of the vendor ecosystem happens. Very fair points, and this is precisely why I asked you these things, because these could have come only from someone who is working on the ground, right? Who's seeing things hands-on. I want to ask you, Arun, here, what has been the experience of HPOIL? Is this some kind of a similar experience? And first of all, and secondly, to what extent do you agree that there is something to be done urgently to ensure that the profitability, to take care of the profitability aspect of the residential connections?
Actually, thank you for Mr. Ravi also for putting up these critical aspects into perspective. We are just developing, you can call us a startup also. We are just, we are not yet given any gas connection as on date. We have some little bit of CNG setups in our GH. And going forward, we expect in next 6 months to have our gas connections, CGD will stand on its legs, so to say. But in our journey of last, say, 1 year, we have faced lot many challenges, lot many difficulties. And within that, what Mr. Ravi specified about, one is the profitability aspects. Yes, the market is as it is, the environment is as it is. Certain part of it is depends on the vagaries of the market dynamics or even the external gas pricing, as Mr. Nikhil told. And we are there with it. Yes, the PNG connections are not profitable, especially for tier 2 and tier 3 cities. We have, say per household, the MDP cost itself, MDP laying cost per household comes to something like 8 to 10,000 rupees. Whereas maybe in a tier 1 city, it will come little less because the density is more. Likewise, other costs, I won't think of smart metering now, but at least even with normal metering also, the other costs do work out quite high on a per person basis.
Okay, fine.
As you talk about the only profitable, the really profitable area which will cover the costs, that is automotive sector. Yes, there the developments are the supplier developments are quite vital, and we presently we are in a kind of a cycle. If you see, the sector has suddenly opened up from the 9th and 10th rounds, and now going forward 11th round. The players who have entered, be it the existing or the new players, they are now opening up, and new GAs and new CNG stations, especially they are now part of the performance criteria, the CNG stations also. And as we go forward, everybody, before the steel line is laid, we require boosters. So the booster compressors now are very much in demand, and the whatever limited players, it will take time for the new players to come in. You can say, for example, the price of a booster compressor 3 years back, let's say it was 35 lakhs. Now it is somewhere around 50 lakhs. And of course, the AMC costs and all will be going up much on a sort of much uptrend as compared to when the prices of basic price itself. Maybe now the cost of the online compressors are they have not increased so high as compared to boosters, because the demand for the online compressors perhaps will come in next 1 year. That will come and it will increase. Same situation for, let's say, for dispensers also. And like other equipments, considering the meters, the import factor and all, that is also quite in a difficult situation in procuring meters, especially the domestic meters. So yes, the Make in India is a noble objective, and we should support that. But at the same time, some kind of coordination in opening up the sector, while opening up the sector, is absolutely essential to make the overall survival of the players, especially the players who are coming in new. That is because the existing players who have some strength, they can add 1 or 2 or 10 GAs and manage. But the new players, they will have to plan in a very cost-effective manner. That's what is my view. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those views, Arun. I want to ask Mr. Trehan is here, Sandeep Trehan, and again a very well-known person in this industry. And what I want to ask you is, so people have so far spoken about a lot of issues, which is very nice, because they seem to be people who are working on the ground, right? So you have people who have highlighted things of profitability, vendor development. Now Arun has also talked about the issue of cost. What has been your experience here, and if you could comment specifically on all these 3 points based on your experience so far?
Thank you very much, and it's good to speak on this forum. I think my colleagues have expressed their opinion about the sector. We are quite new in this sector. For last 2 years, we are there. And our approach is that this sector requires a new direction. And we have to do things differently, and not only think differently, but act differently in each of the segment of our business, whether it is procurement, whether it is laying of pipelines, whether it is approaching to the customer. So we need to review our approach so that more and more we can penetrate into the business and create ecosystem which favors the conversion of other liquid fuels and solid fuels into natural gas. So if we want to take care of that complete segment, if you pick right from the policy side, we need some kind of consistency in different states. Each state is having a different policy of approving your, pipeline laying approvals. NHAI behaves differently on different highways. You have different municipal corporations, they have their own laws. So there is no consistency, which is the major challenge. You can't put anything common or standard in your business model. So each GA gives you some surprises in some with some authorities, which is need to be attended. Similar thing comes on taxation side. In certain states you have VAT, which as low as 3.3%, like in Punjab, but you move in MP where we are working, it's 14.3%. So it changes the business dynamics and approach to the customer. So you need to modify, your approach depending on the GA, and it changes the complete business model. Similarly, one more thing which we found, quite different. People are not ready to accept the success story of one customer in one geography, a sort of a input to implement in their geography. Like for example, in Delhi, buses are running on natural gas, but if you go to the new areas, no, still we will test the diesel buses, and we would like to learn how it gives us less pollution, less mileage, good mileage or good fuel economy. So all these questions, are related with more and more customer awareness and exchange of information. So it brings me to a point that we need to create success story which is locally acceptable. There are some success stories around the country. Gujarat, their people have converted into gas in transport, industry, household. Maharashtra, people have done it. Delhi, people have done it. But if you go to some new areas, they want to see their own success story rather than believing on some other person's success story. So that is the biggest challenge, and that's where I repeat that you need to be very, 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 very special to offer a local solution, local story, local communication, so that customer engagement is the key. If we want to engage with the customer, we want him to change to natural gas, we have to communicate in a way that he understands, and we have to tell a story which he understands and he accepts as a major decision making tool in his business. Everybody wants to change to natural gas when they hear it gives you some fuel economy, it gives you some less pollution, it improves your quality of life, but everything comes down to the economics of the fuel, and where everybody wants to know where is my benchmark, how I'll be after 5 years, 2 years, in terms of if I use gas or if I use some other liquid fuel. So this is a major thing, and this can be only done through consistent communication and creating some of the proof of performance on the ground, touching some applications, and here again the technology becomes very important. As of now, the people have converted the customers, by continued support of a state or persuading them to do for a change. But now it's the time of technology, which can demonstrate that how the change can happen very fast and at a very low cost, and how the change will be very efficient for their business, and how they will become more competitive by using the natural gas as compared to other fuels. So it is very important to demonstrate this to the customer. It is the time that when customer has to, change and come out of solid fuels, coal, wood, etc., and try
And
using
start
natural
adopting
gas.
technology which
Yeah,
is working for them.
and technology has to play a great role in this direction. So I will just summarize. The problems are many, and challenges are many. If we continue to do the same thing again and again, result will be the same. And if we change the approach, we engage with the customer in a new way. Ultimately, customer is going to create a business for you, not the infrastructure. Infrastructure, requires money. You bring money, spend money, and if it is not utilized properly, it doesn't make a business case for you, and it doesn't make some kind of efficient city gas distribution system in the country. So we need customer. We need to bring them in. We need to work with them. We have to change their thinking process. We have to act them. We have to make them act differently so that they select natural gas as a preferential fuel and bring a qualitative change in their life.
Balaji, let me turn to you on this point. So you have listened to all of the panelists so far, and people have given different perspectives depending upon what they are seeing. Right, the way I look at it, right, it looks like it's a sector which is still under development. A lot of things need to change. People are talking about certain lack of consistency, lack of synchronization, and even market development from vendor side. That's not there. That's still developing. Sandeep, who just talked about it, he said that there is a need to completely look at completely renew a lot of things, right? So it's a market which is developing. It's a sector which is developing. On tech side, is it the same story being played out in the CGD sector? Where do we stand on tech, and what is the overall as far as technology is concerned? What are the main or the chief pillars of the CGD development? Where do we stand? What are the things that we need to do more? Or are we even on tech front also we are in the same stage where we are experimenting with a lot of things and we are still trying to figure out what works?
Sure, Sudheer. Thanks for having me here in the midst of this esteemed panelist here. And I think the stage was well set by Nikhil earlier, and then quite very well articulated by Mr. Ravi, Mr. Arun, and Mr. Sandeep earlier. And I will also try to take few of topics that that has been already touched upon. I will sort of retain my talk to tech. We clearly understand that this is an evolving sort of a market and quite a many challenges. So I'll just set the context with respect to where the technology is at this point of time. Though the technology might be sort of a smaller problem considering the overall context of CGD business, but then there are certainly areas which could leverage on the positive sides as well. Now, to start with, I would say technology adoption has been quite varied from company to company. Basically, it's all dependent upon how a technology is either viewed as a lever or it is just made to look at as a monitoring tool. It depends upon the customers. We have seen customers go with the no automation. We have seen customers go with the basic automation, and we've also seen some customers who are quite advanced in adopting sort of technologies. So the technology at the distribution level is going to remain the same as in the past. It's going to be there and the same with respect to say metering the systems or the pressure reduction systems or the basic RTU and SCADA in which the data is all taken, and then you have a centralized control room, and then you sort of monitor them. If you see the CGD business, as you rightly pointed out by the earlier panelist, there have been a lot of cities where this has been quite successful. The adoption of natural gas as a fuel is quite large. One of the things that we have seen is the technology is sort of tied up to a particular city or a state. But that probably augured well with a situation where there were few sort of geographies which are adapted to say CGD. But today we are in a situation where there is a common operator and then the assets is geographically distributed. So you have certain companies operating the CGD business across so many states, across so many cities. So from a technology company, I would probably I really like the idea, Mr. When Sandeep told that nothing differently, and that's exactly what we have been trying to position. How could the technology be a leverage? So instead of tying up the technology, particularly the SCADA systems and then the layer above the SCADA systems, which could be common, not being tied up to a particular geography. So you don't want a SCADA system for a city X, city Y, city Z, but have a SCADA which is overarching for across the assets, and then the freedom is there with the operator to use SCADA scalable with respect to how a particular adoption increases. So in case adoption in a particular city increases, then you are maintaining a common infrastructure for SCADA, and then you are able to leverage the technology towards it. So that's the first thing I would want to sort of really think. So earlier, it is also about how the ecosystems of technology is supporting us. The cloud-based systems are much more sort of in vogue now. I would not say that the adoption is completely there, but then that is the thing that is really supporting, providing a common infrastructure for the SCADA and IT systems, and then use them depending upon where the geography is required or where the geography is expanding. This is the first thing I would want to state. The second thing, which you also seen in case of an automation or a technology, is everything is viewed as an island. So you have a SCADA system, it's an island, and then there are associated systems of CCTV or the GIS systems. These are all viewed as an island. So typically what happens is, either the manpower requirement goes up to monitor different systems, or the adoption of these technologies goes down because they are all varied and island. So we are a firm believer that an integrated system in which you have a common control or a SCADA system which would interface seamlessly and show the CCTV or show the GIS based information on demand, or depending upon an event that could be generated, that could make systems more ergonomic and more effective for the operators to use. The third one would be, how to what level you want to take the automation systems to. So you just want to monitor them or use this repository of data for something more advanced. Now we are in a days where there are quite a lot of algorithms that is available, like asset monitoring of so many assets across geographies. So in order to attend to and breakdown, the travel time across the cities or the travel itself is a sizable component during the O&M period of a contract. So if you're able to do an asset monitoring, use ML machine learning type of logistics, and then do some forecasting, these are technologies that is sort of available. If you ask me, provenness, there may not be proven asset, but then I always believe that these are something that needs to be co-created along with the technology partner and an operating partner. And when these two partnerships work, I think you can leverage technology beyond just monitoring and just assimilating data, but how this data can be built upon and used for much more productive one. And one of the major thing that we've seen in this COVID times is is adoption of technology. Even access to a normal office type of an environment became quite difficult. We have seen during the earlier stages, each company had to sort of rework their strategies on work culture. Definitely there were industries that was working on the essential sector like a CGD business. We need to pump in gases for either to keep the automobile running or the industries running or the households cooking. So the other technology enabler we are seeing is now, instead of just isolating them and then putting them onto the control rooms, today's technology is available wherein you can bring them on mobile, be it iPad or Android or iPhones. So decision making at varied levels. An operator needs to know an operating data, or a plant operation people require operation data that could be made available. Probably the executives might need the the analysis of what's happening. They don't want to be worried about the parameters or how the pressure and flow are varying, but then about the asset conditions or This is something that is available. We have also seen, it is also possible for large scale customers. We have a mechanism called gas contracting. So the entire contract can be put into an automation system. So your ability to monitor the gas consumption, bill them depending upon the rates. The rates could be flexible depending upon the border rates. So these are a lot of things that the technology could be there. But I think that the challenge is around how an operator views technology and how it is leveraged, Sudheer.
Thanks, Balaji, for those views and a lot of really important things you have said there. My key takeaway from that will be, for example, that we need an ecosystem approach for technology. We don't necessarily have to go for city-wise, development of technology. A very important point to make there, Mr. Dwivedi. I want to ask you. I want to come to you on this point. So, if you can help us understand and give your views on, there are 2-3 really important things which have been said here. First of all, about profitability, right? And people have said that it may not be profitable as a venture, particularly in the residential segment. Do you think? Is that the same kind of experience you have had in your experience? Secondly, on technology front, Balaji has given a lot of information on how should we actually look at that entire technology landscape of CGD development. So when a utility like yours looks at expansion in a way in which we are doing it in a large state like UP, for example, to what extent we are able to adopt all of those best practices, and where do we stand on that?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for providing me such a prestigious platform to speak, and thank you very much all the panelists there. Now, as far as the profitability is concerned, Mr. Trehan has very nicely narrated every aspect of it. Thank you, Mr. Trehan, for enlightening us on the various issues. But anyway, first of all, let us talk about as far as the pricing of gas is concerned. We know that as far as present scenario is concerned, with respect to APM gas, whatever the gas is being allocated to CGD network is being given at $2.39 per MMBTU. And the highest price gas in our system right now is from the Henry of approximately $10. So there is a lot of the quite substantial range is available. For PNG and CNG, fine. Till this pricing formula goes, the thing seems to be okay. But moment we look at from the industrial and commercial front, people are driven exactly by the economics. Means consumer is driven exactly by the economics, not by any other factor which we are promulgating day in and day out. So anything which is they are comparing with the kind of fuel they are using right now. If they are using furnace oil or LPG, so they are going to compare the cost of the gas, what they are supposed to get, should be at least at par or lower than that. And as we know, what we have seen, that LPG prices come down to approximately rupees 26 per meter cube. And whereas the gas at the landed price is slightly more than that. So it becomes absolutely an economic criteria for any consumers to choose which fuel they are going to use. Any other factor like environmental factor, convenience, etc. definitely is going to take a backseat. Another thing, as far as the development of CGD network is concerned, and on the CNG front of it, especially in the walled city area, there is not much of the scope is left. We are not getting the sufficient space available to install our COCO, our city gas stations, or a mother station per se. Not much of the land is available, and then definitely we have to go for daughter booster stations at various OMCs. There is also a limitation of space and the kind of infrastructure which can be set up. Now, presently, the talk in PNGRB is going on with respect to opening of the network for the third-party access. Now, this is also something which you have to look into seriously from the point of view that unless and until a CGD entity, because CGD entity is a business entity, they are supposed to get a sizable, at least optimum return on the investment to be made. If the things are open up, then definitely it is going to hit the CGD industry in a big way. When industry is also already looking up, still we are not mature in the market. Things are coming up in 9th and 10th round of bidding. It has already been seen that approximately by 2019 March, the total number of PNG connections were 50 lakhs. And what has been quoted in 9th and 10th round of bidding, total number of PNG connections will go up to 2.5 crores, approximately 400% up. Similarly is the case with the CNG stations, which have been already mandated to go more than 6,000 as compared to 1,800 as of now. So there will be a sizable investment on these fronts, but these investments are supposed to be backed up by genuine return. Unfortunately, in few of the GAs which has been already awarded, gas connection means connection from the main trunk line is not in the nearby future. So what is going to happen? CG entity has to supply gas there, just like doing whatever a market seeding. In that scenario, not much of the profit can be generated out of it. Until the permanent gas supply is not restored, a city gas distribution network in that particular area will be a tougher area. Now, as far as technology part is concerned, definitely it has to go in tandem with the laying of the network and everything is concerned. But if you look, I'll just take a very small example with respect to GIS system. As far as GIS is concerned, for steel pipeline network is fine. Movement on network is late, but whereas our MDP network, because of the n number of contractors are involved, and of course we understand the workmanship of those contractors are not at par what it should have been. In a particular depth and particular coordinates, if the pipe is late, sometimes the pipe is not found there. So for any GIS system to be successful, the marking and the placement of the points has to be very correct. And that is the only reason that third-party damages occurring very frequently in our area, because somewhere they are doing their own work without any knowledge to the CGD entity, causing a havoc on our system. And another point, that because the pipe where it should have been, MDP pipe where it should have been, it is not there. So definitely the technology is going to help us when we work on the ground zero level to the utmost efficiency and correctness. Now I would like to mention a few of the points which Mr. Trehan has already mentioned, that there has been a lot of delay as far as the permissions are concerned. In that front, unfortunately, especially on the municipal corporation level or NHI level, the idea which has been mooted by the central government is not percolated to that an extent. And people do not give that much of weightage to the CG industry and its development. I'm sorry, please forgive me to say that, but that is the ground reality which we are facing right now. A lot of time is wasted in seeking the permissions and exorbitant charges without any synchronization and understanding between the two states or two cities. And things are not that straightforward as should have been. Now, there is a heavy capital expenditure as far as any CNG station is concerned. If we have to build up a CNG station, 6 to 8 crores of rupees are invested. And in that scenario, if we do not generate a sizable or at least a reasonable return out of it, then it will be very difficult to go for such a high number of 7,000 or 8,000 what has been mandated in 9th and 10th round of bidding. Now, as far as the equipment availability and demand, Mr. Trehan and other Mr. Nikhil have already mentioned it, that not much of the vendors are available. Around 228 GS have already been promulgated and they have been mandated by the PNGRB. But the availability of the equipment and their delivery period is a constraint now for us. They do not stick to the delivery schedule, and that is the reason the things what we plan are getting slightly disturbed. So these are the points on which we have to focus on, and moreover, it will be prudent on the part of state government that they have to understand from which philosophy the central government is promulgating this CGD. It is just because it reduces our carbon emission from 2005 level to 2030 level by 30%. And CGD is going to be the major vehicle for that. So on this front, there are numerous problems, no doubt about it, but definitely solutions are there. Only thing a bigger focus from the local administration, from the state level has to be there. And that is all my submission about it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks for those really important points, Mr. Dwivedi. Nikhil, I want to help. I want you to help us understand this. A lot of people are talking about this issue of vendor development. Now, it brings me back to the original question that I asked. Right, even after we have come so far when it comes to CGD infra development. So many GAs have been given over 9 or 10 bidding rounds. Why is it that we are still, facing problems on vendor development side? So, for example, equipment is not available. So, why are we still facing that issue? The other is, on financing side also, because a lot of people are highlighting the issue of, high cost, lack of profitability. So, so what are the different options available to us on financing side? Can we look at innovative financing for development of CGD projects? How do things happen today, and what more can be done when it comes to financing also?
Okay. So Sudheer, what I'll do is I'll just pick up the vendor development question first. And so to answer your question, see, what we have seen historically is that the CGD networks, whenever they used to come, the bid rounds, right? We used to see 4, 5, 7, 10, at max 15 licenses that used to be awarded, right? And according to that, the market was well established to have and cater to those kind of CGD requirements, because whenever CGD comes in, you don't need so many compressors or so many meters or regulators or pipes, or for that matter, daughter booster stations in one go. Okay. What happened in 2018 is that we had seen a sea change in the overall licensing regime, wherein we had seen so many GAs come together, and that's where the entire, I would say not the problem, but the good problem started, right? That we didn't had any vendors to support that kind of infrastructure. If you ask me, in 2017, we were doing at KPMG, we were working for one of our clients, and we were doing one study wherein, we got to know that the cylinder capacity, the CNG cylinder capacity in 2017 was equivalent to the 5-year requirement of 10 demand. Okay. And in today's context, if you ask me, it's again a big challenge, because what has happened is the entire warehouse is empty now, because people are looking at taking more and more cascades, cylinders into cascades, and so on and so forth. So it's all about demand supply, right? We had seen a sudden upsurge in demand, and there was not enough supply to maintain that. And in fact, even globally, if you see, there were not so much of demand that had come in. Now, some of the private sector players have actually gone ahead and bought some of the compressors from China, and they've deployed those compressors here in India. But then with this new entire anti-China thing that's coming in, we are facing challenges in terms of getting equipments from China in that sense. So that's the problem. So basic problem is very clear. It's about demand supply. So that's on the vendor development side. On the financing side, see, what we have done is, we at KPMG, we have helped some of the CGD companies raise equity and raise debt also. And what we have seen is that any investor, for that matter, will look into a proper business appetite and business plan for that particular geographical area. What is the kind of demand that exists? Because it's all about conversion, it's all about demand, and it's all about generating those revenues. So what typical investors look at is, what is the kind of demand potential that exists in that particular geographical area? What is the kind of consumer profile that exists there? Because if you see a typical CGD in that sense, and if you segment this CGD into four major verticals, which is domestic, commercial, industrial customers, and CNG. CNG is, I would say, the most profitable segment if you have enough domestic gas to be supplied to this particular segment. Now, that's where, if you see the CGD companies coming in, they have actually, most of the investors have actually seen what is the kind of potential for conversion of CNG in that particular geographical areas. So if you were to ask about what type of models are very conventional models, where you would see upfront investments coming in from equity players, or some of the pension funds looking at investing into this sector. But that will come only if the business plan is robust enough, if they have, if they understand that the appetite is there for conversion, purely based on demand from an industrial customer or just a huge domestic consumer base. Nobody is going to fund, because all of my colleagues on this call will agree that domestic connections doesn't give us revenues, right? It's the CNG segment that gives us revenues.
Nikhil, I also want to understand something else here. One of the panelists talked about how there has to be more clarity on demand side, for things to work out. There was a recent report by, I think, Morgan Stanley. They were saying how if you look at in times of Corona, right, over the past few months, if you look at the percentage rate at which different fuels have grown in India, gas has the highest rate of growth, right? Gas has seen the highest rate of growth. So if that being the case, why are still questions being asked on demand side?
Okay.
That's something that's happening. At the same time, the government is saying that we are going to go fully on this larger expansion plan. So despite that, gas demand is in question. What's really happening there? How do you explain that?
Yeah, so we need to see where the gas is flowing. So that's also important. Gas is not only in CGD sector, right? So if you would have read that report, just see some of the elements that were in talks in that report, but there were different sectors of gas where gas is consumed, right? So if you see refineries, there was a drop. CGD sector, there was a drop. Power sector, there was an uptake. And why there was an uptake in power sector is because Andhra Pradesh, most of the power plants which were connected to gas in that sense, they actually used gas for that particular period of time. And the uptake, if you see, or the percentage rise that you see in gas demand had actually come in from power sector. But overall, if you ask me, and I know we have Mr. Agarwal from GAIL, he would agree that overall, if you ask the overall GAIL portfolio, there has been drop. So it's only in certain sectors the gas has gone up, especially in power sector, because at that point of time, power generated on gas was much more. I wouldn't say much more, but it was equivalent to the power generated by coal in that sense. And in dispatchability point of view, gas is much more cleaner. And with this entire COVID-19 scenario, this is something that has come in good. Wherein people are now they would definitely demand for cleaner sources and avenues of fuel supply, wherein gas can play its role. And going forward, if you ask my opinion, I would see that from a demand supply perspective, you would see some bit of demand coming in from power. However, in CGD, the gas is currently also at a low level than what it used to be before the COVID scenario. It will grow. It will take time to grow, but like I said, it's a retail sector. It takes its own sweet time to develop. That's the problem.
Yeah. Mr. Agarwal, can you comment on that? Nikhil is asking for a comment on demand, and I also wanted to ask you, because you were earlier talking about how demand is taking a hit, but is there a visibility in terms of if COVID, let's say if the COVID related issues are over, let's say in a year or slightly more than that kind of a time frame, isn't that good enough reason to believe that gas demand for CGD will pick up?
Yeah, I'm fully agree with Mr. Nikhil, whether there is a up only on the power sector, and as per the CGD sector is there's a drop of around 25%. Now, because of the CGD sector, that to pick up the demand, I also agree with him that that the demand need to come in the real numbers, and because of the domestic connections, this is not a profitable pay. So the demand has to be generated in the CNG sectors and the industrial CNG sector per se. So what is my suggestion is that overall the CNG highways, which is the need for an hour, that the government must focus that all over the pan India, the CNG highways should open. There has to be a scope for collaborating with all the CGD industries, and which they have a action plan oriented on the timeline, that which are the CNGs they are going to put up on the highways, so that there is a through highway is available. And you will find out that after some time, when this corona effect will be over, then the people will be more on preferring the owned vehicles instead of the public transports, and there would be a spot in the vehicle markets. In the automotive sectors, you are seeing that started picking up, and I foresee that in the time to come that would pick up, and the CNG highway, if the number of the CNG stations they are put up, then it will the CGD sector would be revived. And once the CGD sector revived, then there would be the number of the in the household sectors that would also be survived. So the growth area for this particular thing is that how to revive the automotive sector, and that's the reason that I feel that after a year there would be a growth. If you see quarter to quarter, that earlier up to the April there was a drop of the 40% in the CNG sector, but in the sector which is closing on the 30th of the September, we are seeing only the 20% drop. So there is an improvement of the gas on track on the CGD sector also, and I agree that after a year that this effect would be almost minimized.
Like I was saying earlier, it's a very interesting topic, and we can just go on and on, debating about these issues. Each of these issues, deserves a separate session, I believe. But then time is short, and we have to wrap up. I would say, it has been a very interesting discussion where we have talked about a lot of really important topics. Right, there people have highlighted a lot of issues, like issues of there is a lack of coordination and synchronization. There is even things like equipment and vendor development is an issue. We have, people have also highlighted issues of profitability and cost. But then we also have to understand that at some level, it's still not a mature market, right? It's still an industry which is growing, right, despite all these rounds of bidding. And it's a system which is still developing. And if we do the right things, like Balaji was saying, right? For example, if we follow that ecosystem approach for technology, for example, and like Mr. Agarwal was saying, if we follow the highways model of growth, then there's a lot of scope because the stage is set. And to borrow words from Nikhil there, the stage is set for the growth of the sector. With these words, I think we can wrap up the discussion. And gentlemen, thank you for your time, and thank you for those really, really interesting views. Please keep watching this space for more. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for a detailed and insightful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, after every session, you will see a feedback form on your screen. Do fill that form. This helps us in making our events better and seamless. Also, share your learnings on Twitter using the hashtag ETEnergyCGD.